pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Philippe, and welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. And this is just an impromptu raw reaction because usually I only do Vikings raw reactions or Wild and Timberwolves raw reactions. But this is a reaction to the outcome of a game that has serious ramifications for the Minnesota Vikings because the Lions lost this afternoon to the Buffalo Bills. And this is huge because now the Lions sit at 12 and 2. If the Vikings win on Monday night at home against the Bears, which my God, I hope they do, because that would be embarrassing if they didn't, then the Vikings would be at 12 and 2. They'd be tied in record with the Lions for the first time since these two teams played each other in the first few weeks of the NFL season. After that, the Vikings subsequently lost their next game, lost two in a row, and the Lions took control of the NFC North pretty much up until this moment. And so now, let's just cut to the chase. I don't expect the Lions to lose to either of these last two teams, the Bears or the 49ers, especially with McCaffrey being out for the season now for the 49ers yet again. The 49ers have so many injuries, and I get it, any given week, and the Lions did show some holes in their, like, the Lions defense is atrocious right now, and they need to find ways to fix it because you can put up all the points in the world, but if you're going against another good offense and your defense is as trash as that, then you have to be the best offense or put up the best offensive performance you put up all season long to counteract that, and just really exhausting for your players to constantly have to go out there and score another touchdown just to keep up. So they showed some signs of weakness. It's an any given week league, but I don't expect the Lions to lose any more games. The Vikings most likely have to come into that game 14 and 2 to have a shot at winning the NFC North. But that's just the important part, is that the Vikings control their own destiny in this situation. We had to worry the last few weeks about, oh, I hope the Lions lose. I hope they lose because we don't have a shot if they don't lose. Now they finally did lose. Records are potentially tied if the Vikings beat the Bears, and it comes down to who can win more games, the last three, including that last game against Detroit. So the Vikings, technically, there are random avenues for the Vikings to still lose, but it would also require Detroit to lose. Like, for example, if the Vikings lost both of their last two matchups, or not even that, because the only tiebreakers that the Vikings and Lions would have to deal with were, within the NFC North. So, like, if the Lions were to lose somehow to the Bears coming up, and the Vikings could win against the rest of the NFC North, but then lose to Seattle, that's the only situation where the Vikings could technically still sneak in. But no matter what, the Vikings need to beat Detroit because obviously the head-to-head tiebreaker trumps everything. If the Vikings are 0-2 against Detroit and lose that last game, it doesn't matter because even if Detroit loses their last two, well, really, technically the only way that would have to happen is Detroit loses to the Bears and 49ers, the Vikings win out, which is not going to happen. Technically, there's still an avenue where the Vikings can lose to Detroit and make the playoffs, or make or win the NFC North, but that's pretty much out of the question. So the only question now is, if the Vikings were to run the table and beat Detroit, would we have the tiebreaker over Philadelphia? Which, let me take a quick look here at the playoff machine. We're just taking a look at the rest of these matchups. Let's just say all of these teams win out. Vikings beat the Packers, Lions beat the 49ers, Eagles beat the Cowboys, and then week 18, the Vikings or the Eagles beat the Giants, and then the Vikings beat the Lions. Hold on. Why is my... So, okay. So there you have it. In common game record and in NFC record, all of the different tiebreakers, the Vikings would have the tiebreaker over the Philadelphia Eagles. If all of these teams were to win out going into the final week, and then Philadelphia wins, the Vikings beat the Lions, that is still the avenue that we can have to winning the NFC North and then getting the number one seed at 15-2. So hope is still there, Vikings fans, and we're I honestly think going down the stretch here, getting the number one seed is that much more important because right as it stands right now, the Washington Commanders, Green Bay Packers, and then Detroit Lions, if this is the scenario I'm looking at, if the Vikings were to win, would be the fifth seed, sixth seed, and seventh seed. And then the fourth seed would be the Buccaneers. The Seattle Seahawks would be the third seed. So now, not only are the wild card teams scary, but all of a sudden the division teams, which we didn't think would be scary, all of a sudden they're playing lights out. So in general, I think there isn't a single team on this list that I think, well, no matter who they play, they're going to win in the wild card round. Like, no team is safe. So I think the bye is that much more valuable this year. So I'm going to get more into the semantics when I do my official video about it. I'm going to break that down on either Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, where I'm going to be going into the semantics of, okay, if this team wins, if this team wins, if this team loses, I'm going to go through and screen record my playoff machine while I go through all of that with you more in depth and more specifically. But just the general gist is the Lions aren't expected to win or to lose either of these two games. And even if they do, it doesn't really matter because even if the two teams go in with the Lions up or with the Vikings up a game going into that final match against Detroit, if Detroit wins that game, they win the North because of the tiebreaker and the head-to-head between the two of them, and Detroit winning that game at the beginning of the season. So basically, the general gist of it is the Vikings can then win out and win the North, but that's about the only route we have in order to do that. So big loss as Detroit loses to the Bills, and the Vikings now are in control of their own destiny, but have some tough games coming up. So the first step is not getting ahead of ourselves. I'm worried that we'll think ahead to these tougher matchups against Seattle and the Packers and lose this game to the Bears, because it would be the most Vikings thing ever for the Lions to finally lose a game and then for the Vikings to lose against this team that we should easily beat. But I'm trying not to think like that, trying to stay optimistic. But we'll have to see. But let me know your thoughts. The Lions lose against the Bills and the Vikings have a shot now at the NFC North. Should be a good next few weeks. But thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the flip side.